you had mentioned that you had left the band for a little while.
I actually left 83, first time, was gone for, 11 years, I think, and then did Walk on Water. A few gigs here and there, nothing too much, a little tour of Japan and stuff. Decided I didn't really want to go out on the road with them, and there was still a lot of, tension and kind of weird vibe going on in the band back then. So left again and was gone for about another 11 years. It's an 11-year cycle, and came back in 2005. Because when I came back in 2005, then it was Vinny. And that tension had gone, man. I mean, the band it was just different, it was fun again. And that's the thing with me, I think for me to devote this kind of portion of my life to it, it's got to be good and it's got to be fun, so.
Right. Well, what sort of convinced you to come back at the time that you did?
Well, in 2005?
Yeah, because ultimately you were off for about 2 decades and...
Yeah, exactly. Well, the last time was quite... it was a phone call from Paul Raymond, completely out of the blue. I'd been in England actually working with my family, completely out of the music business. I went back to England in '94, Los Angeles, and I'd kind of had enough of that and was planning to move back to the States. And we'd kind of reestablished my residency here, and we'd had a house on the market in England, and we're kind of getting ready to move back. And we decided to come to Texas because my wife. She has family here. And I think it was in August, I just kind of got a call out of the blue one Sunday evening sitting at home, and it was Paul Raymond saying, hey, Phil said there's not much point in calling you because we've asked you a bunch of times before, but this was Jason Bonham, I've been playing drums with him. Jason's left and gone with Foreigner. We have this show that we can't get out of to do in November. We were wondering if you'd be interested. And I went, man, that's just so weird. I just, got ready to give up my job and go back to the States. So, yeah, why not? So I furiously got out sticks and started practicing to knock off the cobwebs of 11 years, of actually not playing. And did the show, and it was just so cool. I got on a plane, I sat on the plane with Phil and Paul to Spain. It was at the shows in Spain, and it was kind of like, man, this just feels good. And did a couple of days rehearsal and did the show, and they said, you interested in staying? I went, hell yeah, this is good. So here I am.
Well, they had to work really hard to replace you. Jason Bonham, Simon Wright, Ansley Dunbar. It's not like they threw some no-name in there. They brought the talent. They
did. And they have some good talent in there too. All good players, man. But I don't know. I guess they're just used to me. So it seems to work. People seem. I've had so much nice. Stuff on the website and that since I've been back. You can't fault. We got the best fans in the world. And they seem relatively happy that I'm back. I think there's one guy in Switzerland wasn't happy. I think you like Jason more, but there you go. Can't please everyone, can you?
Absolutely not. Now, you guys put out probably the most iconic live album of all time, Strangers in the Night.
Yeah, still my favorite, I think.
Absolutely.
Not favorite album. My favorite UFO album.
Right. But of the UFOs, the studio albums, obviously, because you sort of had 3 different eras. You had the well-known Shanker era and everything. Then we had that sort of era there in the early '80s.
The Paul Chapman era.
Right. And then, of course, sort of the newer era now with Vinny and everything.
Right.
If you had to pick an album from each era, which ones are your favorites?
Wow, that's tough. It could be, obviously Strangers, but I think if I had to pick a studio album, I really liked Obsession. I thought it was a great album, kind of the last one of that thing. Then Paul's probably No Place to Run, because we got to do it with George Martin, which was just a huge thing. Although The Wild the Willing was a great album too, didn't get the recognition it won, but just working with George Martin was just such a huge deal for us, so. And then later, I've only done the 2. So, I think I'm going to say, I'm going to say Monkey Puzzle, because I kind of never expected to do another album with UFO. It was so out of left field for me that it was just such an amazing thing to actually be back in the studio and doing another UFO album. So, although I really like Walk on Water too, it's difficult, because there is so many factions. But yeah, let's go with either Strangers or Obsession. Because Strangers are live albums, and if you can count that. And then No Place to Run and Monkey Puzzle.
I see a lot of people overlook that whole Paul Chapman era But that was one of my favorite eras for the band, The Wild, Willing, and the Innocent, and Mechanics.
Yeah, Making Contact. Yeah, No Place to Run. Yeah, I think, I've been asked this before, and I have to say that, we were getting a lot of stuff on the website about why don't you ever play songs from the Paul Chapman era, and there's obviously a large bunch of people who that was the age they caught UFO, depending on how old they were. Right. When they were a bit young for the 70s, and come on the 80s, that's kind of when they hooked in with the band. So to them, that was their defining UFO. And we were getting these hits on the website saying, why aren't you playing stuff from the Chapman era? So we sat down and we dug up, 2 or 3 songs and put them in the set. And you know what? They just didn't go down that well. So whether those people don't bother to come to the shows or what it was, I don't know. But after, a couple of weeks of trying these songs, Phil just said, you know what? They got to go because we got a lot of material. And, if stuff isn't going over, then you switch it out. And, that's a shame. So there's nothing really in the set now from that. But I think also, at that time, our record company was kind of like they just weren't behind us like they had been in the 70s. Things had changed, the whole punk thing was happening, and, we just weren't flavor of the month. And the records didn't get the help they deserved. And there is, as you quite rightly say, there was some great material on those albums. We just didn't get heard. And, so, there's obviously a lot more people remember the 70s stuff with Michael than they do remember the 80s stuff with Paul. That's
just that iconic era that everybody remembers. A lot of people don't know this. Billy Sheehan was actually filled in for Pete for a while.
Yeah, he did. This is funny because I catch Eddie Trunk's that metal show whenever I can. Uh-huh. And I was just flipping the other day, and it had Billy Sheehan of UFO, and I went, what? Because as far as I know, I was actually in the band when Billy was in the band. I don't think he's been in since, not when I've been gone. No. But he did one tour of Poland, which lasted for about, I don't know, a week and a bit, I think, maybe a couple of weeks. And then we started a European tour, and he was scheduled to leave anyway because he had his own band, Talus, I think they were called back then. And, so he was going to leave anyway. I think his last show was going to be Athens, Greece, and then Paul Gray, who ended up doing a stint in UFO, was going to take over. And that was the infamous gig when Phil actually passed out on stage, and the whole thing ended up in a complete disarray. And I think Billy ended up getting hit on the head with a can of beer, like a full can of beer. Get an egg, like a lump the size of an egg sticking out of his forehead. It was just one of those UFO moments. So I'm kind of surprised when they bill him as Billy Sheehan from UFO, but yes, he was in the band for maybe 3 weeks. I guess that's enough, because there's been an awful lot of people in the band, on and off over the years.
You were talking, you guys are getting ready to go on tour again.
Yep.
I've always wondered, with such an extensive catalog of material, we're just talking about 3 different eras, and there's really sort of that 4th era when you weren't in the band, but
right.
How do you guys decide what to include in a set list for a tour? And
it's a nightmare. There's like 20-odd studio albums to pick from. But I might be able to give you an exclusive. Hang on a sec. I'm just going to go back in my emails here. There's talk now of another Suicide and Venus hitting the stage set. And this is straight hot off the presses. I only got this email yesterday, I think.
Okay, repeat that because it broke up a little bit.
Another Suicide. You'd have to guess which albums these are off. And Venus. Well, Venus is off of Walk on Water, right. Definitely. Another Suicide. That's a Paul Raymond song, so I'm guessing that's off of like Obsession or I don't know, Lights Out. I don't know.
Okay. The band member doesn't even know.
No, well, there's a thing. That's a song that we've never ever played live that I know of.
Right.
But Phil had just mentioned that we need to, do, pump up the stage set of it, change it out. So there's just 2. So you want to be first to know. That's what's being talked about.
That's another Suicide.
And there's something saying about starting with Out in the Street. Opening with Natural Thing and segueing into Out in the Street, like on the live album. So right. It could happen. I can't guarantee it. That's about all I can tell you. That's just what's being kicked around right now. So, but we'll actually do a couple of days rehearsal right before the tour, or at least one day. We usually cut it down to the minimum. So we'll just, So what will then happen? You know, we'll do our homework before we go.
Right.
And then, and then see what happens. But yeah, it's saying how the opening was natural thing, and segueing out in the street, which is like on Strangers. And then there's, like I said, there's mention of another suicide and Venus. So your guess is as good as mine.
That's one of the things I was going to ask you, what are you into outside of music? I mean, obviously there's a lot more to your life than just UFO.
Well, I mean, between 83 and 94, I actually was in California. I was a licensed California state contractor. That's what I did for a living, I had a daughter. I mean, in fact, my daughter just turned 31, got married last weekend, so, which was fabulous. But I mean, back in 83, when I split up with her mother, she was 3 years old, so I needed to stay home and be with her. So that's why I got into that back then. So I did that for a long time, and then did that little stint with the guys in 94, then moved back to England and went to work for my family and ran a sheet metal shop for nearly 12 years, believe it or not, building all sorts of display paraphernalia. And then got fed up with that and came here, and I actually already owned 2 houses. We bought a couple of houses in Texas over the internet, just like you do nowadays. And came here, small town in Texas. I love it. It's like Mayberry, if you remember Andy Griffith. It's just like, it's got the courthouse on the square, and it's a historic town, and we have one house where we live that's in the historic district, so everything has to be run by them. I'm just doing that, when I'm home, I work on my house, and we have some rentals here too that kind of keep me busy. So, yeah, that's what I do. Like my dogs, my garden, and the house. And my wife, of course, my second wife, Jo, loves her garden, so I spend a lot of time out there sorting stuff out for her. I just spent better part of this week moving tons of rock and edging flower beds with all these rocks. So I'm thinking actually about, I don't know if this is a good idea, and I'm thinking of actually putting a little extra page on my website of stuff, just so people can see what you do when you're not doing the music.
Before we get out of here, you've worked with Michael Schenker, Paul Chapman, Vinnie Moore, all 3 guitar legends in their own right. Tell us a little something unique or different about each of them, because they all approach music differently and they've all brought a different sound to UFO.
Yeah, okay, well, let's see. Michael, just the fact that he, the amount of work that he put in, the incessant practicing, just that guy, he just worked so hard on it, that's just like, hit perfection, basically, which a lot of people say it just didn't come from nowhere. He worked on that thing, he would practice hours and hours, to get the thing perfect. So that's what I really admire about Michael. I mean, he's an incredible player. Paul, just his overall exuberance and just indestructiveness. I mean, we used to call him Tonka, and it wasn't, for no reason. I mean, he was just indestructible and just exuberant. And Vinny's just incredible all the way around. I mean, he's just a great guy, great musician, a lot of fun. I mean, you can throw anything at that guy, and he just, he can come up with it. So, they're all different in their own, but they're all brilliant in their own ways too.
I can't thank you enough for what you brought into my life musically.